you are listening to the Footy Mailbag Podcast with Damo and Clarky.
Hello and welcome to the Footy Mailbag. My name is Damo and also here as usual is Clarky.
Hello.
Our guest this week comes from the coaches panel, who have been some of our biggest supporters since venturing solo with this podcast. So thank you to all of them over there. But specifically here today, it is MiniMonk. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Pleasure to be back.
First time you've been here since we departed Jock Reynolds.
Yes, yes, it is.
Yourself and MJ have both been, like I said in your little intro there, some of our biggest supporters since venturing solo, away from Jock Reynolds with this podcast. So thank you to you and MJ and coaches panel.
Yeah, well, I mean, thanks for inviting us on and thanks for coming on every now and then as well to when MJ does the 50. It's good to get the support out in the community. It's really nice to see everyone kind of supporting each other inside of the Supercoach community, and it's good to be here to chat with you guys tonight.
Clarky, we have to talk about your Melbourne Demons just very quickly.
Boo.
I mean, specifically Max Gawn. You like Max Gawn.
Who doesn't? Look at him. He's beautiful. He does the Google ads. He's tall. He's got it all.
He's bald.
Yeah. He's got it all except hair. You're right, Minnie.
It was a round of huge scores. You had Matt Rowell on Thursday night. You had Isaac Heaney, Caleb Sarong, Dan Houston, Zach Butters, Dane Zorko. But a lot of people were saving their captaincy for the last game of the round for Max Gawn and got stuck with a 109. So they decided that Luke Ryan's 122 wasn't enough. They decided that Zach Butters 124, or whatever he ended up on, wasn't enough. And unfortunately, they got stuck with a 109. This just shows the importance of taking a good VC score and locking it away as soon as you get something that passes, that kind of passes through your little gate that you've got when you have a vice captaincy, isn't it?
Yeah, look, people need to account for the occasional remembrance that Melbourne are a shit team. They're not good. We have problems. Max Gawn is just a really good ruckman, and the game plan was clearly designed to go against him. So sometimes it's better to just hedge your bets and take a safe score instead of shooting for the moon. Monk, I don't know if you ended up with a Max Gawn captain, or were you sensible and took a better VC option?
I was very fortunate to get a very high VC option. I had Dane Zorko on the Saturday night as my vice captain. And I didn't even have to make the decision because I actually don't own Max Gawn.
Even better.
So the fact that 60% of the competition had him as captain and he only went 109, and I say only, which, for any other player, 109 is a good score. For Max Gawn, it's a average day out. Look, I think that at 109, I think the decision-making process was probably right. 109 isn't the worst score to end up as captaincy. Is, people got an injured Tom Green 5 a couple of weeks ago. Like it could be so much worse, but I think you need to be very aware of what you're setting your line at. I think something like a Butters 127, I probably would have looked at taking. Maybe some of the low 118s like a Caleb Sarong or a Harry Sheasel for people who went there, or a Luke Ryan, I probably would have maybe passed on, but maybe considered taking as well.
Yeah, and people have different sort of thresholds when they have a VC. Some won't take a VC if it's lower than 125. Some will take a VC if it's above 115. It's everyone has their own little sort of thresholds that they look at when they do a VC, but if they decide if they want to take it or not. And sometimes it depends on who their loop is and who their captain is playing. So, I mean, your thought process could be completely sound. It's just unfortunate that Max Gawn West Coast had a plan for Max Gawn and executed it, at least in the first half anyway.
Yep.
I think it's
as a non-owner, seeing that second half was a bit sickening, but I'm kind of used to it because I've seen Max Gawn pull out 70 and 80 point second halves probably the last 3 or 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah, I think it's there's been plenty of reminders this week. I think that sometimes you can make a good decision that goes south, and we do have a listener question about this one, but I think we'd be remiss in not mentioning it while the topic is here. But Isaac Rankin, a lot of people traded him in this week. He myself included. He came back into my side because it just made sense. He scored a 125, and then in the last 30 seconds got dealt with 2 sickening punches, one in the form of an umpire's call and the other in the form of a 3-week hamstring injury. It swings and roundabouts, people. We can't predict this anymore.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a lot of massive injury problems to premiums, touch wood.
If you're the one who's jinxed it, I swear.
Damn it, Damo.
Why did you say that?
Every single one.
This could be the end of this podcast. I will never live again. I will never be allowed behind a microphone ever again. But I mean, there's, like you mentioned, one question there, Clarky, but we have another question that talks about there's still over half a season ahead of us, and people are down to like 15 trades. It's like, I know people will
me out,
and I know a lot of people will try and sit on 7, 8, 9 trades for the run home, and that should be enough because your team is quite strong for the run home. But there is still over half of the season left, and some decisions will come back to bite you in this run home because there's more rounds left than have been played.
It is very scary that we are not even at the halfway mark yet. It's still 2 full rounds of AFL that we have to play before we're even at that halfway mark. We've got the 4 mid-season buys where carnage inevitably comes. You get the late season restings that come, especially when it comes to the teams in the bottom few in the ladder, resting their older players who tend to be the premiums from those teams as well. I mean, we do have the extra trades this year compared to last year, which I think some people are hiding behind as a security blanket, but I wouldn't be surprised if teams start to run out of trades by the round 18, round 19 mark and try and float through to the end with the car out of petrol.
Hey, don't talk about my car. It's like we're in a cost of living crisis, Monk. We can't afford.
We're in a cost of trades crisis. Yeah. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, the cost of living crisis has extended its way to Supercoach, and how are we meant to afford all these beautiful, beautiful premiums?
Well, let's talk about the rookies on the bubble this week. So we've got Joel Frazier at the Western Bulldogs, who's a dual position mid forward, 117k. Joe Richards, Dante Vicentini is on the bubble at Port Adelaide. So is Noah Cumberland at Richmond and Lloyd Johnston at the Suns. It seems most people are tossing up between Frazier and Richards or both. If you were choosing one or the other, if you had to choose between one or the other, who are you going for there, Clarky?
I like that you went to the dumb guy first. This is a good move because I honestly couldn't split the difference between these two because I know nothing about their job security. On one hand, I don't trust Luke Beveridge. On the other hand, I don't necessarily know enough about Collingwood's depth to tell you if Joe Richards is going to play long enough to capitalize on the, minus 95 break even?
Something like that.
Something insane like that. So for me, it's currently Richards, but team sheets may force me to do that. Frazier seems to have maintained his spot as of the time of recording. A team lists are in for Thursday night. Is that good? Who knows?
Mini, where are you sitting on this sort of on this debate? Are you going Frazier or Richards?
I currently have Frazier in. mainly because of the DPP allowing me to be a bit more flexible with my team, not necessarily just this week, but also through the buys. I really am struggling to split them as well. I think I struggle to have to pick Richards this week because if I have a forward only, it means that I don't get the look at the Son Darcy loop. I just have to take his score straight up, and that is a bit scary. But there's every chance we get to 6:30 on Thursday night, and Bevo names Joel Frazier as the sub, and that would be dreadful. And I'd have to pivot my team at that point to probably get Richards in, which isn't as fun, but we have to deal with what we deal with. I think for most people, if you're not in a situation where you're running a red dot forward, like if you don't have someone like a Livingston at your F8 position at the moment, Richards should have the better job security because of the Collingwood injury list. But it really just is a flip of a coin. If it suits you better to have the DPP, then I think that Fraser should be good enough to pick.
I know Richards had a ton in his first game, but I think from here, Richards and Fraser should both score fairly similarly. And I know Fraser doesn't have as low of a break even as Richards, but the difference in price and all that should eventually allow that to balance out in the end, especially once that 100 plus score is out of Richard's price cycle. So I'm going for Fraser just because it allows my trades a little better this week, but I see no issue with going for Richards if that suits teams and trades. Dante Vicentini, if he's in this week and Jordan Sweet isn't, I know there's only a couple of weeks until Ivan Soldo returns. I don't think people should flip them. I think you should just probably. I mean, I'd like to know where you guys sit on this because I don't think Vicentini or Sweet will play once Soldo is ready to return. Mind you, though, Vicentini is probably a better up forward than Sweet is, so probably has that little saving grace if that is what happens.
Yeah, I don't think Vicentini plays when Soldo is back. I can see a world where Sweet actually keeps Soldo out of the team. He looked really good when he played that game against Adelaide, and the man's gotten very unlucky getting COVID, and then the fact that he has Ken Hinkley as his coach is just a double whammy. There is a world where Sweet gets this week and gets round 12, and that's enough to get him to a low 300s price tag and be able to trade him at his buy at round 13, which would be, I think that would be perfect for anyone who went for the Sweet punt and tried to put him in at RA3 or even R2. I think if that's the case, then you probably look to flip him at round 13 unless you've got other things to do. But I certainly wouldn't be advising trading Sweet down to Vicentini to get 120k. And I don't think I would be advising anyone unless you're in a very desperate position. You need an R3 score this week, and you want to get an upgrade on the other end to actually get Vicentini in.
Agreed. Clarky, David Swallow is 188k. Any interest?
Cool. Thanks for that info, Damo. Next question.
So no interest?
No, I don't think so. Look,
no.
We like David Swallow, the football player. Seems like an alright guy. Has a lot of history with the club. Very respectable. Supercoach? No relevance. He's 188k because he's lost significant value and doesn't have a role. His role is medical sub.
Yes.
And you just can't buy that at any price. Oh, okay. Maybe 102k.
He's in a lot of discussions as a downgrade option, but I think he's only played the last two games. I think he's only played the last game in full. The last few games before that, he's the sub or has been subbed out. MiniMonk, I know you have thoughts on this.
He played as the sub for, I think it was either 4 or 5 games in a row. One of them he was injected in very early, I think. 3 weeks ago now, I think, he played against Brisbane. He played 105 minutes of game time and he scored 36. He scored 98 against Geelong. That looks really good. 36 in 105 minutes of game time and the potential to be a sub for 4 to 5 weeks in a row. I think I'll pass.
Before Geelong, he has not had a score over 60 and includes 2 single-digit scores, a score below 20.
And 3 in the 30s.
Yeah, it's baffling to think that. There's no... This is the thing, right? He hasn't established a pattern. This is an anomaly. This is a spike. Don't downgrade to him now. There's no point because he could just go back to nothing. And yes, he's got a negative break even this week, but what are you going to do when he scores 4 next week?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's a no from all three of us is what I'm hearing.
Correct.
Players who have played one game, Ethan Phillips lined up for the Hawks on the weekend. He's 102k defender who probably has a shaky job security with James Sicily returning soon, but who knows with the Hawks. Will Dawson played for North, and Steely Green and Matt Coulthard both played their first games of the season for Richmond. I think Ethan Phillips is the one that everyone's got their eye on for down back. Is that probably true there, Clarky?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. We love a defender rookie. Ethan Phillips is pretty reasonably spoken about in the preseason, if I recall correctly as well. So Hawthorn have a need to also get games into these young talents while they have the opportunity and they can be competitive with good structure. So I think Ethan Phillips does fall into that. And I don't think he had a horrible game. But yeah, the Sicily return is imminent and concerning. So see how he goes. It might be an option probably in 2 weeks.
I mean, does James Sicily returning and Ethan Phillips staying in the team help James Sicily, or does it help Ethan Phillips in staying in that role, or does it help both of them? That's probably the one question that I have. And if they both stay in the team and it frees up James Sicily into a more intercepting role that we all know and love from James Sicily in a Supercoach world, it sort of brings both of them into relevance that you could both bring in to your team after their bye, which is the second
15.
last one, the second last one or the last one?
I thought they were round 15. I've got it in my notes that Moore is the round 15 bye, so I'm assuming that also means that
it is round 15. Correct.
Well, they do play in the same team, so that makes sense. So, so
good work, guys. Reasonable deduction
there. Moving on swiftly, premiums bottomed out this week. Luke Jackson, Tom Green, Andrew Brayshaw, Luke Davies, Uniac, Dan Houston, and Zach Butters will probably be as cheap as they're ever going to be for a while. Will Day, Lockie Whitfield, and the man we were just talking about, James Sicily. The name that sticks out there for me is LDU, Davies Uniac. He hasn't had the greatest start to the season, but his last few weeks have been okay. 5-round average of 112.8. MiniMonk, I know you're an owner of LDU. Do you trust him to maintain a 110 sort of average from here?
Do I trust him? No, I don't trust him to be able to maintain a 110 average, but I know that he can, and I think that that's the difference. And I've looked at the runs for teams from now until the end of the season, looked at their scale of difficulty, and North Melbourne actually have a relatively friendly run from now until the end of the season, especially for inside midfielders. Someone like LDU is a player that could capitalize on it, and we've seen him be able to go on stretches of 130 for 5 or 6 weeks. It's not for the faint-hearted, but if you're wanting to take a punt on a player that's a very big differential, I think you really can't go wrong by trying to look at that.
Speaking of players that are about to go on a good run, Tom Hawkins is 295k and plays Richmond in round 12, and then from there has a pretty easy run, aside from a couple of games where he comes up some pretty stout defenses. So there's a chance that from next week he can make some pretty large amounts of cash just because of a couple of games where he has the chance to go massive. But his partner in crime, Jeremy Cameron, is also a premium close to bottoming out with a break even of 145. So we'll get back to the Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron discussion in just a second. Other premiums close to bottoming out is Nick Martin, Connor Rosie, Josh Dunkley, Luke Ryan, Max Gawn, and Tim English. So keep those guys on your radars. But Jeremy Cameron and Tom Hawkins, one or the other or both, they've got a good run coming up, and Richmond in round 12. I know Richmond are having a hard time with injuries, but teams are beating up on them, and forwards especially have the opportunity to score big.
Yeah, they definitely do, and it's definitely. I don't think it's both. I think it's one or the other, and it really is going to depend on your budget. I think being able to go someone like a Tom Hawkins at that price tag with the friendly matchup with a low break even, potentially make 150Ks through the buys and get a good score from one of your 16th, 17th, 18th player. I think that's something worth looking at. Jeremy Cameron is definitely a longer term play. If you see him as being a top 10 forward from now until the end of the season, he will be about 430, 440K next week. There's not many other forwards in that price range that I could see being a top 10 forward. I think Jai Caldwell this week is 480K, and he's someone that I'm considering. So to get someone who's 40K cheaper and has the potential to go on a run that's probably comparable, really worth considering this for round 12 with that matchup.
My big concern is bringing in a Hawkins type for one really good matchup, and then you're also expecting him to have an uplift of form against regular teams, or teams that would say probably at the. I'll be friendly to our Richmond supporters out there. Thinking of you, Swizz. There are teams that are just sort of not struggling or as cursed as Richmond are at the moment. I don't know, even at 295, if that's worth the risk. Just because as a key forward, there's going to be some stinkers in there, and you have to be okay with the stinkers. You'd probably even be playing him off the bench as a loop, with whoever that is. I like Jeremy Cameron as a long-term option because his role moves him up the ground. He's a bit very, very Harry Mackay-esque, but they're a little bit more reliant on him to move the ball up the field and to take sort of, I would say, offensive marks that help push the ball into their forward 50. Like you see him coming up the ground, coming up the wing. You've even seen him running through the center square at times. So I think, MiniMonk, you're spot on that it's a bit of a longer term play, but his role is actually a little bit better for the eye tests. So that would be, if we have to split the difference, I mean, I think that would be it for me. But you're talking about Caldwell, and there's a myriad of other forwards that we could even consider. Matt Guelphy's been on a couple of really hot ones. Like if we're talking about form, I don't hate it.
I don't love it, but
hey, you don't have to love everything.
I mean,
that's fair.
Another name that's been posed to me this week is Brian Myers. So
I own him in draft, and it's more fun to own Myers in draft than it would be in Classic. I'll tell you that for free.
I mean,
I can believe you there.
To credit Chillo, who is on X, as it's now been rebranded finally.
Twitter, yes.
Yep. We have to be open-minded with the forward line this season because the options aren't as forthcoming as usual. So, look, Caldwell, Rankin, Myers, Guelphy, these are all options that you can't rule them out because the forward line is just a crazy place this year.
It
I do
really
actually,
is.
I know that
I mean,
I don't know we're meant to be talking about Tom Hawkins, but I just want to say now that you've said Caldwell, MiniMonk, I'm looking at it more and more and just like, oh, but we could though. With Darcy
Let's get.
Parish out, we could.
Yes. That's the
Sorry,
interesting part
sorry
about
to
it.
step on your other point there.
You're all good. I was just gonna say, like, if you look at the forward line outside of, I'd say the big three in Zorko, Heaney, and Flanders, it's not pretty to look at. There's not really anyone that's shown consistency of role, let alone consistency of scoring. Rankin was starting to show that, and then owners got hit with a double whammy of not only the free against, but also the hamstring injury right when he was coming into a nice run of fixtures. But he's probably one that coaches should be keeping an eye on for when he's back from his injury, despite the run not being quite as good, because I think that the Crows will try and persist with him with that role. But, the likes of Luke Jackson is very dependent on Sean Darcy. The likes of Jai Caldwell is very dependent on Darcy Parish. The likes of Brian Myers and Jack McRae are dependent on how much their coach trusts them in any particular week, which tends to flip at a whim. I think that if you can find someone that you're comfortable with to go 90s, or at least average 90 from now until the end of the season at a price tag that you're comfortable paying, that might be enough to actually make the difference and try and bolster up your other lines where there is a bit more certainty about, who are the top 8 to 10 mids, who are the top 2 or 3 rucks, who are the top 10 defenders, and picking those types of players up instead.
I want to, off the back of your really good point, make another dumb suggestion, if I may. People
Please.
are going to be tempted, and I want to ask the panel now. I'm not saying that we should. However, future Coleman medalist Jake Waterman, he's at his top price right now and has literally just been doing it. I would say almost Tom Hawkins-esque of the past, where he is kicking bags every week. Past 5, 176 against Richmond. Okay, understandable. We know why that's happening. Sorry, Richmond. 107 against Freo, 115 against Gold Coast, 92 against Essendon, 142 against Melbourne. And he's coming up against Adelaide, St Kilda, North. Then they've got Essendon again. And then they play Hawthorn. And then Melbourne again.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
It's hard enough to pay $450K for a player that plays as a key forward who pushes up the ground, let alone $550K. I like the thinking. If you had bought him 5 weeks ago at whatever it was, 300 odd K, you'd probably be screaming up the ranks at the moment. But I don't think anyone could have seen this coming from a mile away, let alone the Eagles, I think.
This is why you're such a beautiful human, Monk, because that's the most polite, just like the "Are you crazy? Come back to Jesus" conversation that I think I needed. But how much of a good podcast host am I that I would say no to Tom Hawkins at 295, but yes to Waterman at 550?
I mean, one's 34 years old, 35 years old, and is a dairy farmer, and the other one's the second coming of Gary Ablett Sr.
Oscar Allen is back in 3 weeks as well.
Yeah, I would think it's rude for Oscar Allen to get in the way of Waterman's culture. I think that would be very rude of him, and I would never forgive him.
Bring in the mid-season trade period and trade Oscar Allen. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, trade him to Melbourne.
They need key forwards, right?
Yeah.
Let's get to the listener questions finally. The first question comes from Belinda. Do I trade Sherry to Marshall this week or fix up my rookies? Sherry being traded was already in my plans for next week when North Melbourne are on a bye.
I think you should stick to your plans. If, for what my 2 cents are worth, fix up your rookies and make sure your economy is going to be good going into the bye. Like you already planned it. Why not just stick it out for 1 more week? I don't think it's going to tank your entire season.
Yeah. I mean, Cherry comes up against Port Adelaide this week. Maybe play it depending on if they name 2 rucks or if they just named the one. If they just named the one ruck, I'd probably be willing to take the punt and just hold him for one more week and then go to Marshall or even English next week, because English will be very cheap as well and will have bottomed out.
Yep. Agreed on both accounts. No extra notes from me.
Thanks, Linda.
Next question comes from John DJ59. He's looking to get Fisher back in after trading him out early in the season. I have a follow-up question to this. Is it too late to be doing that? If I don't do that, I'll be doing a double downgrade to Fraser and Richards.
I don't think it's too late to do that even after his bye. And that might be the controversial take here. But they do have Port Adelaide this week, and I just said that Port Adelaide's a good matchup for rucks. It's not a good matchup for designated kickers or people that get a lot of +6s and build their score off the half-back flank. Port Adelaide's quite restrictive in that respect. However, the run for the rest of the season for North Melbourne for that type of role is quite good, and we've seen now for about 3 weeks in a row they want to put Sheasel into the midfield. They really don't want him going back. He only went back late in the game on the weekend because they had an injury down there and he had to cover that spot. But that should mean that Fisher and to an extent McKercher should get a lot of points down back there, because that's, Sheasel was going 130s for fun. If Fisher can go at a 105 marker or even just a flat ton, he's a really nice F5, F6 option for the rest of the season.
Yep, no notes on that one for me.
So my follow-up question is, I've always been told never to trade someone back in after you trade them out. That's one rule that's kind of been ingrained into me from very early days playing Supercoach, and I really try and avoid it. If I've traded someone out and their form recovers, then that's on me for not having patience. Obviously, Zach Fisher is a different sort of issue with him having different roles,
kettle of fish.
but different kettle of fish. Yep. But to me, I still struggle to talk myself into trading someone back in who I have already traded out. I'd just like to know both your guys' thoughts on that.
I think we need to understand that Supercoach is an evolving game, right? Like we're in a period where I think like the 40 trades and people are finding new ways to utilize extra trades. And remember, just before the season when all these changes were announced to the game, people lost their minds. People lost their damn minds at the idea of 40 trades. So why are we going to hold ourselves to... And this is someone, like I, as someone who has a rule of I won't trade in Dane Zorko because I don't like the person, right? Like I'm aware that we all have our little rules that we follow that are internalized and make sense to us. But I don't think you should ever shame yourself into going, hey, that didn't work out, but now they've got what I thought they had and I can get them at a good price. As long as you're not paying an outrageous, like you've not sold your pen. I haven't sold my pen to Damo for $5 and he's selling it back to me for 10. Like Zach Fisher was not extortionately priced last week. I brought him in last week. I'd never owned him, but I brought in Rankin last week. And Rankin was someone who I started the season with. He made a little bit of money and then his role went away. And then I traded him to, I think it was Flanders. And that's overall been a better move for me in the long run, where you can look back at it now and go, oh, well, if I didn't trade Rankin, I'd have an extra trade. And it's like, yeah, but the season's kind of like that. You can only work with the information that you have at the time. So I think we need to move away from shaming others and shaming ourselves to going, oh, hey, I was wrong about that. Like, that's fine. Now's a good time to get him, though. But make sure you're doing it for the right reasons and not just because, oh, it's good. He's good this week. If they have what was missing, then the puzzle's complete. Swing away. MiniMonk, I don't know if you have anything different than that.
I think it's fine to have rules. It's fine to have never again lists as long as you understand the reasons why you have those rules and why you have them. And if it's just, I don't like the vibe of this particular player, that's fine. Like if everyone plays the game differently, everyone's trying to get different things out of the game. And that's what we're all doing it for. We're all doing it to have a bit of fun. I think most people traded out of Fisher when he was named the sub because you don't want to cop a 24K price drop like he did that particular week. But since then, we've seen a fairly stable role shift. He's gone 95, 140, 116, has a break even of 0. Yes, he's got the buy after this game, but if you pay 500K for a player that can be a F5, F6 keeper, I still think that that's pretty fine. If you've traded out of him and you don't want to trade back into him, that's fine. If you've traded out of him and you do want to trade back into him, that's also fine. I think that there's plenty of reasons why we do trade out of players. You know, some players get long-term injuries. Some players have a form drop-off. Some players have a role shift, and then 6 weeks later, the role comes back. It's all about playing the game in the way that seems to make sense to you. And to me, I think that trading back into a player who's had a clear role shift like this is perfectly fine.
Okay, so to circle back to the question from
Did that answer your question,
from
anyway?
John DJ50, yeah, it did. From it's personal
Mm.
preference. So to circle back to the question from Don GJ59, do the double downgrade this week and then pick up Fisher after his bye. I think was the I think was what people mostly said.
I think that is a very viable option. I think there's a lot of podcasters and a lot of different people who probably say grab Fisher this week and save yourself the 50K. My response back to that is if you get Fraser and Richards, chances are they're both going up 100K in the space of 2 weeks.
Yeah. I think do whichever. Neither option is necessarily bad. I think it depends on your position.
100% agree
That's
with that.
the best way to think about it. And hey, love yourself and love others, listeners. That's what we got out of that.
Next question comes from Daniel. What to do with Rankin?
I don't know. MiniMonk and I came up with a similar answer just before we started recording of lie down, try not to cry, and then cry a lot, which will only get you so far. So I think we need to add a fourth step to that.
Yeah, I think the hardest part with him is that you're going to miss that really nice run of fixtures that he was having.
Mhm.
And being a premium down during the bye rounds is going to hurt a lot more than probably any other round. I would be looking to trade him this week. I think that you can take your pick. I think if you went him instead of Zorko, I would just probably consider moving to Zorko this week. But if you want to try and maintain a similar buy structure, someone like Jai Coldwell does exist. I believe they're around 14 buy. I've almost certainly have got that wrong, haven't I?
Hang on.
No, they're around 15 buy. Okay, so
close.
I don't know. Dylan Moore exists if you want to pay 530K for a player that's gone 66 last week against them. You know what I mean? There's enough players around that you can go to that'll be fine, and I think that moving off of him makes the most amount of sense to me this week.
Yeah, I would agree. It just, at his price, it's too much. It's too many points. If it was a rookie, you could probably write it out. A la Zach Reed, please come back. We miss you. We miss you so much.
I really don't want to have Zach Reed and Ethan Phillips at D7 and D8 come out of the buys.
So plenty of good options, I think, sitting around his price. If you missed Zorko, boo. It's sensible. Like, my personal opinions aside, I can't sit here and not say, hey, that's probably a sensible trade to just spend the extra 50K and get a guy who's got a 3-round average of 140. That just makes sense. If you wanted to go a Jake Waterman, I also empower you to do that. That costs you almost nothing except the trade. Jai Caldwell exists, as MiniMonk said. It's time. It's time to go. You can't lose him for that long with their bye coming up. This 3-week injury is probably closer to 5 because they won't want to rush him back.
If the buys weren't literally like a week away from starting, a 2 to 3 week injury, I probably would have said hold if you can. But because the buys are coming up, and as MiniMonk said, having that premium score down when it's best 18, that will hurt you more than holding him around this time of season. So right now, advice would be trade to someone who is going to be playing. But if you had asked in about 3 or 4 weeks' time, then it might have been a case of holding.
Yeah. If this was after the buys with the way that his price tag is and where his break even is, I would 100% be holding. It's just a victim of circumstance, unfortunately.
Trade him to Harley Reid.
Oh, jeez.
Harley Reid
Please
play.
don't. Please don't
do
do
it.
that.
Why not?
Because the 2 weeks before this week, he went 59 and 59.
Yeah, that's fine. He does play St Kilda and North at Optus though,
He has
and then bring
shown
Rankin right back in.
he scores well when he has bad matchups, and he scores poorly when he has good matchups. I can't pick when he's going to do well.
Yeah, this is fair. MiniMonk is definitely reconsidering ever coming on a podcast with me again after today.
Not at all.
Clarky, good fella, cooked brain though. Smooth like a river rock.
Clarky, you're the one that said it. Next question comes from Vinny. Are the rookies worth sitting on to conserve trades instead of cashing in at their peak? There is still over half a season ahead of us.
Depends on which rookies.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
If it's Caleb Windsor, see you later. If
Yep.
it's Closey, probably another week.
Yep.
like if it's Jeremy Sharp, he's best 22 for Freo. So he's probably someone you can sit on until the right player comes along, because I mean he's scored 90 and 89 the last 2 weeks or something along those lines. So he is someone that you could possibly sit on and conserve the trades, because he is going to continue to make money if he continues to score in that vein. But I don't think there's a lot of rookies that have a very strong job security for us to be able to sit on. So I think you just got to have to decide who you're sitting on if you are going to sit on anyone to conserve trades. But the point of rookies is you buy them at their lowest and then you sell them at their highest to get better players at their lowest who can produce better scores. So I understand that there's still over half a season ahead of us. There's more season ahead of us than has been played, which is scary to say out loud. But if you've properly planned your team and your trades up until this point, that shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Yeah. I think that people are looking to hold rookies with the thoughts that they're going to provide reasonable scores for them through the buys and have good job security, which I get. But most weeks during the buys, let's say you're at 17 or 18 premiums at the moment. I think that most teams should be around about that number, if not more. You're probably fielding 14 premiums most weeks of the buys, maybe 15 some weeks, maybe 13. Those 4 rookie scores that you field, if they're a difference between a 70 and a 50, I don't think that's really going to matter. But if you can get the upgrade, and let's say you're cashing in someone like a Darcy Wilson compared to a Sam Darcy this week, and that's an extra 50K between the two, and that 50K can get you to a Marcus Bontempelli instead of a Jack Steele or instead of Andrew Brayshaw, I'd much rather go to the player that I would say is almost locked to be a top 8 midfielder than to spend down and go for the player that's a bit more speculative.
I would say, based on my current team, because I can't find all the rookies. If we had to sit on any that I currently have, Darcy Wilson, you could probably sit on for another week or two. Maybe he's got a really good role. Seems to be best 22 for St Kilda. Sam Closey, as I said, you could hold on to. If you're an Alex Sexton owner still, that's going good.
You sit on him for 3 weeks until Will Powell comes back, and you pray that he holds the role over Will Powell.
Boo Will Powell as well.
Yes, definitely boo Will Powell.
Yeah, absolutely. Caleb Windsor, gotta go. If you've still got him, he's gotta go. He had a really nice spike with that triple figure game, but it's in the 90s now. Will Graham, I don't know if he's coming back, so maybe get rid of him. See what the teams are like this week.
I think Sam Darcy is another who could be held as well.
Yeah.
He has a fairly good role, but it's a bit more inconsistent with regards to his scoring. But he's still a player that will be in that team week in, week out. He still gets some rock contests to build a floor. I'd be surprised if he drops under a 50 score.
He's also really fun to watch if you do own him.
He is.
Like,
He's
that's
really fun to
that's
watch.
a really good
He is a
owned
good
watch.
player.
Yeah. Damo, how about you?
No extra notes. I think we move to the next question.
Yes, sir.
Next question comes from Will.
Hey, Will.
Not Will Powell, but a different Will.
Boo.
Thank God.
Pal.
For my upgrade this week, he's looking at Dan Houston or Luke Jackson. Houston is probably a better scorer, but Jackson gives him more flexibility for future upgrades and is better for overall team structure. He's leaning towards Jackson, but he's worried about Sean Darcy most likely coming back this week. What are our thoughts?
I'll let the two of you handle this Luke Jackson related issue, and I'll just reap in the knowledge.
I think that Jackson's scoring is better when Darcy doesn't play, but it doesn't mean that it's consistent when Darcy doesn't play. And that is the thing that scares me the most. He's even at the start of the season, he did very well against Brisbane and North Melbourne, but then he went 98, 91, 72. Darcy comes back in, he goes 90 and 76, 86, 89, and then a big spike game with a 154 against St Kilda, which is turning into the friendliest ruck matchup in the competition, bar none. So if you own Max Gawn, consider yourself very happy. If you don't own Max Gawn, consider yourself very sad this week. However, I don't think that Houston is a massive buy this week, despite the fact that his price has bottomed out. It's hard to know whenever Houston bottoms out because he has this propensity to drop a random 40 out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then he also has the propensity to drop a random 140 out of nowhere, like he did on the weekend. If it suits your team structure, it allows you the flexibility, it gives you the ruck cover, it allows you to upgrade to someone else that you might want, and it suits your buys as well. Well, I guess they both have the round 13 buy, so it doesn't matter too much there, and I don't think there's any other round 13 forwards anyways that people would be buying, except, I mean, you're not buying Nat 5 at this stage of the season, but if it suits your team structure better, I don't mind the Luke Jackson pickup at under 500k.
Just calling back to something that you said probably closer to the beginning of this podcast, Monk, you said having someone averaging 90 in your forward line is probably just as valuable as having someone averaging over 100 in other lines. And the scores that you've read out of Jackson there is F4, F5 kind of scoring for what we're probably looking for. So, and you said that you probably only want one of these key forward types with that type of scoring. So if you're getting Jackson, you're probably ruling yourself out of a Cameron or a Hawkins or a Kerno or something along those lines. But Jackson is definitely someone that rivals those sorts of names with that sort of scoring, even with Sean Darcy in the Freo side.
Yeah.
So if it does help your team structure to go for a Jackson over a Houston, it's probably okay. It's probably okay, but I mean, we can't see his team here, but I'd like to see what both does to his team structure just so I can sort of not make sure that it's better for his structure, but I just want to see what he means because
Understand why.
Yeah, I just want to understand why he thinks going for Jackson is better for his team structure. I don't know if that means Jackson's coming into his R2 or if Jackson's coming into his forward line. That's probably the biggest question that I have going for Jackson. But if Jackson's better for your overall team structure, then I say go for Jackson.
Yeah.
Good work, guys. No notes from me. Dan Houston, good consistent defender. Luke Jackson, probably at a cheaper price for someone who is top 10 forward material. forwards are like unicorns. Please catch one when you can.
Good way to sum
They
it
don't
up.
exist.
You got to saddle them up. It's a whole thing.
So
It's got to believe.
just a reminder, on Thursday mornings, we will post our weekly traffic lights. We'll grade some players each week, and they will either be awarded a green, yellow, or red rating. Green indicates a good pick, yellow is a watch or a hold, and red is a trade or avoid. A player could earn their rating for several reasons, including but not limited to scoring potential, job security, price point, reliability, or injury status. So keep a lookout on Thursday mornings for our traffic lights if you need a hand with your trades. It's now time to go through captains and vice captains.
Oh boy.
MiniMonk, who is your vice captain for round 11?
This might be a spicy take. Currently, my vice captaincy is sitting on Nick Martin.
Okay. I see it. That makes sense.
Dreamtime at the G. Good roll. Dane Zorko went 160 on Richmond last week in a very similar nighttime game. So I'm very interested in that, and I'm backing it up with the one Dane Zorko as the captain as well. So I'm picking the halfback flankers to try and score big points.
Huge. I love that.
Clarky, who is your vice captain?
So when I went to the board to check vice captains, a lot of people like to use numbers, facts, series of patterns. They've got like the whole Rain Man thing going on. I, however, have decided to go a different route and thought, who loves like a medal or who loves a marquee game?
Ooh.
Zach Merritt.
I thought you were going to say Darcy Parish, but he's out injured for 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly, and that means the medal is ripe for the taking for Zachy boy. So I've got the VC on Zach Merritt for Dreamtime because also Richmond.
Yes.
So
Richmond.
this has the potential to be at least a VC worthy game for Merritt. Damo, what about you?
My VC at the moment is on Caleb Sarong against Collingwood on the Friday night.
Love it.
I've thought about other players like a Zach Butters. Obviously, he's later in the round, but I've thought about Zach Butters as a captaincy option, which would allow a different VC like a Zach Merritt. But at the moment, my VC is on Caleb Sarong.
And doesn't feel so wrong to you at all.
No, it feels so right. I tell you the players that I really like as vice captaincy shouts this week.
Please do.
That I sadly don't know if I have the kahunas to go for. Tom Green against Geelong.
Okay.
He is due for a big game, and Geelong just leaked a couple of 140s against Gold Coast. That's a very interesting one. Zach Butters is a good one. In a similar vein, also Dan Houston against North Melbourne.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that.
And even a Noah Anderson against Carlton. Carlton are not that restrictive anymore.
Yeah.
And he's coming on some good form. Even a Matt Rowell could be a good pickup as a vice captain shout as well if you're wanting someone who can go for a ceiling.
That's so juicy. I love Matt Rowell. Matt Rowell, Tom Green is probably a good alternative. I think if you want like something, you want to shoot for the stars, I think that's a good one for owners out there.
And MiniMonk, while you have the floor, who is your captain for this week?
I kind of gave it as a spoiler before, but Dane Zorko currently has the orange armband around him. It's hard to go wrong with someone who's averaging 140 in their last 3.
Clarky, how about you?
I am one of those fortunate son of a gun Max Gawn owners, and Rowan Marshall has been a pretty friendly matchup for Rucks in recent games. I think it makes sense to ride that again. We know Gawn accumulates points like it's nobody's business, and kind of hoping Nam really want to step up their game this week. It's killing me. It's killing me emotionally. I don't need Supercoach to kill me too, so let's hope my medal theory goes through so then I don't have to rely on it. Damo, how about you?
My captaincy at the moment is on Zach Merritt, but I am playing around with having him as my VC and then someone on the Sunday as my captain. But at the moment, it's Sarong as the vice captain and Merritt as the captain.
Okay, that works.
So you got lucky this week, Clarky, because Max Gawn isn't playing the last game. There's no hex there, but it might be a bit of a fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, fiddle DD. That will require a tetanus shot.
That's Damo. Make that meme. You put that out with the socials this week.
Don't put it out too early because then Max Gawn's going to go 200 and I'm just going to hate my life.
Put it out super early. Put it out for daddy.
I'll put it out before this episode goes out and people will wonder what the hell we're talking about.
This will make sense in 3 hours when it hits your feeds.
All right. That's it for this episode of the Footy Mailbag. Thank you, MiniMonk, for coming on. It's been great fun. Where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm at MiniMonk10 on Twitter or X or whatever Elon decides to call it in 24 hours from now. And I also on the Coaches Panel podcast. I've been a little bit absent the last couple of weeks, been a bit unwell. The vid got to me again, but I should be back on some episodes next week.
And thank you again, Clarky.
Always a pleasure. And as I do every week, you can listen to my other footy adjacent podcast, The Falcon. We're a Falcon Footy Pod. The stats tell me that we're so close to beating our record for monthly downloads. So listeners, if you like the footy adjacent, if you like the dumb things I say on here, I've got like an hour of it somewhere else, but with 2 other loose friends, Jesse and Chris. So yeah, give us a listen at Falcon Footy Pod on Twitter and Instagram. But thanks, Damo.
If you haven't given us a rating on your listening platform of choice, please do so. It helps new listeners find us. Make sure you check out Supercoach rings at supercoachchampion.com for a Super Bowl style ring for your league winner. And make sure to visit our brand new website, thefootymailbag.net. Head over there for links to our social media, our t-shirt if you want to buy it, and our Google form for listeners who don't have social media and want to get involved. Footymailbag.net is the website. Head over there and take a look. Thanks for listening. We'll talk next time.
Love you.